Welcome to episode 147 of the Family Answer Man podcast. Today we are talking about what it means to honor your mother at various stages in life from a biblical worldview on the Family Answer Man. I'm your host, David Orgis, and I'm here with Dr. Mark Crosby. He is a pastor, an educator, a mental health professional, and the resident expert here on the Family Answer Man. The Family Answer Man is not a therapy session. We can't give specific advice to your situations. So for in-depth answers to your questions, we definitely encourage you to seek out professional counsel for those unique circumstances. But before we jump in today, if you would hit the notification bell and subscribe to our YouTube channel, that would help us out a lot to make sure that you never miss an episode of the Family Answer Man. And as always, you can just invite your family and your friends, share the show directly with them, and invite them to join you on this journey of having stronger, healthier, and happier families. Well, Dr. Mark, good to be here with you today.
Yes.
We've got a great question with Mother's Day on the horizon. We've got a question I think that probably a lot of people have asked throughout the years, looking at what does it mean to honor your mother through various stages in life.
Right.
And I like the way that question kind of ends in various stages of life. Does this change over time, honoring your mother?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like everything else, we go through various stages of development, and as we go through these stages of development, our life changes accordingly, and we need to adjust accordingly. So because of that, how we interact with our parents begins to change. When you're a child, of course, you have to submit to their authority. You have to submit to their rules. You have to honor, what they want, what they desire. Mm-hmm. You have to sometimes, embrace their advice, whether you want to or not. But that's part of being a child, being a teenager, and that's their job, to guide you, to encourage you, to develop you into the person that they want you to be and that God wants you to be. And so I think it's important that as a child, as an adolescent, and even if you're living in their home after the age of 18, to be submissive to their authority. Mm-hmm. But once you live on your own, once you move out, once you pay your own bills and drive your own car and take care of your own needs and expenses, you now have a sense of independence. And not only that, but once you get married, even more so. You leave and you cleave. And so that's very important to note. Now, for some parents, moms and dads and moms, they don't really understand that, meaning they'll always see you as 14 years old, okay?
Right.
And they'll always play the card of, I'm still your mom, I'm still your dad. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, what they're saying is, I'm still your mom, I'm still your dad, so therefore you have to listen to me. I want you to drive a Ford, not a Chevrolet or whatever, because that's what we drive here. I want you to vote, our way, not your way. Mm-hmm. I want you to vote for my candidate, not your candidate. I want you to attend, the church we go to, not the one your spouse wants you to go to. Mm-hmm. And the list could go on. And so what happens is that these parents never let go of the quote-unquote control or the authority they believe they have over their now married, son or daughter. And they continue to throw this card down, and they really start throwing the card down when they start quoting the Bible, honor your father and your mother, right. That's what you're supposed to do. Meaning in their mind, to honor means you obey what I say.
Okay.
And that's not always the definition of honor. And we'll unpack that more in a moment. But what happens is a lot of, adult, children, married, say, well, I've got to honor my mom and dad. So they tell me I have to attend this church, or I have to go to this holiday, or I have to, go to this event. To honor them, I must obey them. To obey them, therefore, I'm honoring them. And there lies the problem. Because now you have these two competing principles of leaving and cleaving on one hand and honoring your mother or father on the other.
Right. And I think just the fact that the question was written in and that if you're asking that question of what does it mean to honor and what does it mean to leave and cleave, that's a great sign, because it means you are pursuing and you want to have a biblical approach to your relationship with your adult parents. If you have a question that you want to have answered, we would love to answer your questions. You can email us directly. It's familyanswerman@liveoak.church. Familyanswerman@liveoak.church is our email address, and we'd love to hear your questions anytime you have those. And the question that comes in today says this, my mother was always critical and never really involved in our lives. Now that I'm an adult, she's demanding. Even though I'm married, she still says, I'm still your mother, and she reminds me that God says I am to honor your mother. I'm not sure if I even like my mother. Am I disobeying God, and what can I do?
So again, so what's happening here is this. One of the commandments, the fifth one, I believe, Exodus 20:12, says, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be prolonged in the land which the Lord your God has given you. Paul repeats this again in Ephesians chapter 5. But then all of a sudden in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1, and we'll unpack this more in a moment, he says, children, obey your parents in the Lord. So what we're looking at, first of all, I'll argue, is that this verse primarily has to do with the parent-child relationship.
Okay.
But it does go on, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. But the point I need to make, first of all, is the word honor. To honor, I will argue, is to recognize them for who they are. This is your mom. This is your dad. Recognize them for who they are. Recognize they are the authority, at this stage of your life, in your life. Acknowledge their role. Acknowledge their impact in your life. Acknowledge their position in your life. So when you acknowledge someone, when you recognize someone, you're honoring them. I mean, for example, here in the month of May, there are a lot of banquets, sports banquets, academic banquets, etc. We went to one last week where people are being honored for their accomplishment. They're being honored for their achievement. They're being honored for making the 4.0. They're being honored for being the All-American, quarterback. They're being honored for, perfect attendance or whatever it may be. And so what that's doing is they're being recognized for their achievement. They're being recognized for their accomplishment. It doesn't mean just because they have a 4.0, they can take over the principal's office. Okay, they're being honored for their accomplishment. They're being honored for their achievement. They're being honored for what they have done. And so I think as children, we need to honor our parents for who they are, for what they've achieved, for what they've given us, for what they've provided for us. And we need to honor that, which also means to appreciate their efforts, to appreciate the good they brought into our life. Now, every parent that I've ever spoken with has made it clear there are things I could have done differently. There's things I wish I wouldn't have done. There's things I cringe when I look back and remember, what the woulda, coulda, shouldas of my parenting. But the reality is that when an adult child appreciates the efforts and the good that mom or dad brought into their life, that's honoring them. Because here's the choice every one of us can make. We can look at all the bad things our parents have done. I can, you can, my kids can. Right. Okay. Every child can look at all the things their parents did wrong. Or we can pause and say, but look what they did right. Right. Look at what they provided. Look at what they gave. Look at how they impacted my life. Look at what they did that was positive, that was good, that was nurturing, that was helpful. It may be only one or two things. It may be 200 things. But when you pause and ask yourself, what did my parents do right and what have they done that blessed my life, that is appreciating them, and I'll argue that is what it means to honor them. So then as a child, again, one of the things you're to do to honor your parent, your mom, is to submit to their authority. We're called to do that. And Ephesians 6:1 says, children, obey your parents, for this is right, in the eyes of God, so to speak. So what you have here is, as a child, you are to submit to your mother's authority, your father's authority, your parents' authority. That's important to do. However, and this is what we said a while ago, once you're married, everything changes. And moms sometimes, and sometimes dads, of course, never get that memo.
That everything changes.
Everything changes once you're married. You leave your father and your mother, and you cleave to your spouse. And that is a primary important and basic principle. As a matter of fact, we see this in the book of Genesis, and Paul then repeats this again in the book of Ephesians. Now, here's the thing. Now, whenever you say that, the leaving, cleaving principle, people automatically want to think, maybe you think some sort of deriding or derogatory thoughts or comments about your mom or dad. No, you still love them.
Right.
You still help them. You're still there for them where you can, when you can. Okay? You still make provision for them as you can. But they're not your priority. And that's where, for a lot of adults, for a lot of parents, there's where the rub, begins to happen. Because a lot of moms, especially those who, and again, never got the memo of leaving and cleaving, a lot of moms and a lot of dads also struggle with this. Because there are some people, some dads, some moms, some people that are over controlling. And they never, ever want to let go of that control. And the last thing that anybody wants is for someone, even their parent, to control them.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I will argue that good parenting gradually lets go of the control as their kids get older.
Yeah.
You gradually let go of it. You gradually let go of it. Hey, they got their driver's license. Okay, drive yourself to school, drive yourself to work. Hey, they got their first job, so you buy your own clothing as long as it's, decent, But you gradually let go. You start making your own decisions. Mm-hmm. And so there's this gradual let going process, which I think is healthy.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I think biblically, psychologically, both, again, make the point that gradually letting them go, differentiating is the psychobabble word we can use today, but they get to differentiate. I want to go to church maybe over here with my friends instead of with you, Mom and Dad. Okay, as long as you're going to church. I don't want to go to a private college. I want to go to state college. Or I don't want to go to state college. I want to go to private college. Well, if you can afford that, okay, we'll help you out where we can. Right. But again, it's good to let the child make their own decisions. But a controlling mom and a controlling dad begins to become so controlling that all the child wants to do now is break away. No matter how, no matter where, no matter with whom, they just want to break away. And that's when things become problematic.
Yeah, it's a story I think we've all seen.
Exactly. So again, you still love your parent, you still are there for them, but they're not to be your priority, nor are you to submit to them over your spouse.
Right.
And again, a lot of parents never get that memo.
And I love that you said you don't submit to them over your spouse.
Right.
I mean, if you're in agreement with your spouse and you want to submit to your parents, that's
sure,
great, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, if your mom or dad says, hey, look, we'd like for you to come spend, the 4th of July with us. And you say to your spouse, hey, do you mind if you spend the 4th of July with my parents? Hey, great. Let's go that. I think we're good. Bring the kids. We'll have a great time. But if your spouse says, no, I'd rather go to the beach and spend the 4th of July, then you submit to your spouse.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Now your mom and dad may throw a fit. They may throw the guilt trip. We're getting old. This may be our last 4th of July or whatever. They may throw that one down. Don't ask me how I know that, but they'll throw that one down. But the reality is that sometimes you have to make sure that before you say yes to your parents, you ask again what your spouse desires and wants. Ephesians 5 again talks about submitting to each other. Mm-hmm. And so Ephesians 5 breaks that down by looking at the fact that we leave and we cleave from our mom and dad, from our family of origin, and we submit to our spouse. Then the Bible says in Ephesians 6:1, then the Bible says, children, obey your parents. And then the Word of God says, honor your father and your mother. So there is a differentiation between, again, being a child, honoring your father, your mother, honoring your parents, obeying them, and being an adult who's married, and again, honoring your father and your mother. Again, to honor is to love them. To honor is to care for them. To honor is to appreciate them. And in some cases, to honor is to help provide for them as you can. Again, we don't abandon them. We don't discount them. We don't disregard them. But the priority is to your spouse. The priority is to your family now. The priority is to your children. So here's what I want to do for the time we have remaining. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about, again, what does it mean to honor our mothers, at various stages in life? And again, I think it's very important that we also throw in there, what do we do as parents? What can we do as moms? What can we do as dads that creates honor? What can we do to do things that are honorable? What can we do to do things that, again, gives our children the desire and maybe the interest to honor their mother and their father? What kind of environment can we create that will bring honor to us as parents? And moms, this is your week. This is your Sunday coming up. So what can we do? So here are some questions that I think we all need to ask as parents. But moms, we're going to lean on you a little bit this morning. What does it mean? What are some of the things that we can do? What are some questions that you can ask that will help you to motivate yourself to do things that are honorable? Number one is this. What kind of family manager have you been up till now? Moms, that's an important question to ask yourself. What kind of family manager? Do you get input from other family members? Do you get input from your spouse? Do you run and rule the roost with an iron, fist? Are you overly controlling? Do you ask for the opinions of others? So what kind of family manager have you been up till now? And that's a very powerful question, because I will argue that moms, I just believe that part of who you are as a person and as a mom, part of your role is the family manager. Traditionally, if you will, and I know some people push back on this, but traditionally the husband goes and works, and the mother traditionally, manages the home. And that's powerful and that's important. And here's what I've discovered therapeutically as a family therapist. Most people that I've talked with who have that kind of role have a happier family. Because moms, look, I'm going to just really encourage you and just bless you for a moment, because you deserve it. But moms who work 40 hours a week and then take care of families for 40 hours a week, that is impressive.
Yes.
But the problem with that I've seen, again, just therapeutically, is that most moms are on the verge of burnout. And they have nothing left. And I can't blame them.
Right.
They have nothing left at the end of the day, at the end of the week, and I can't blame them. You're working all day at your job, and then you're working all afternoon and evening, at your home, and you're doing homework, and you're bathing kids, and you're praying over your kids, and you're washing the clothes, and you're making the meals, and you're cleaning the house, and you're doing all these things. And there's this husband of yours that requires, of you, and then there's the boss on Tuesday morning that requires of you, and here we go.
Yeah. Anybody that can't acknowledge the depth of a workload that is, just has their head in the sand.
Exactly, and that's why Dr. James Dobson says the most difficult job on the planet is being a single mom. That is the most difficult. And Dr. Dobson, and he, another famous quote of Dr. Dobson was that parenting isn't for cowards. And so the reality is that, again, this is so very important to note. But again, moms, you have to ask yourself the question: what kind of management style do you have? Number two, are you giving your spouse and your family the priority they deserve? Are you giving your spouse and your family the priority they deserve? Again, one of the things we're called to do is to make sure that our spouse is our priority. Because marriage only works when it's in first place. We've said that time and time again. Again, that means there's some heavy decisions we all have to make. But are you giving your spouse and your family the priority they deserve? When you give something else besides your spouse priority, I will argue you're now being broken by the first law of marriage, which is to make your spouse the priority. You cleave, your father, your mother, and you cleave to your spouse. Number three, are you bringing out the best in your children? So moms, in order to bring out the best in your children, that means you have to invest in your children. You have to know them. You have to be there for them. You have to recognize who they are, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, what is it that they need from you as a mom, what is it that they're requiring of you, desiring of you. And every child's different, right?
Right.
There's some children, you can put them on automatic pilot and they're good. They know how to do this for themselves, do that for themselves. They don't require a whole lot of time and attention. They can entertain themselves. They're reading, at age 2 kind of thing, and they have this amazing ability. But there's other children that are very needy. They want that time. They want that attention. They need that nurture. They need that affirmation. They need that encouragement. They need that mom to be there when, they skin their knee. And sometimes, and we've seen this before, sometimes a child will fall and skin their knee, on the concrete out front. But they won't start crying until they're with their mom.
That's right.
Okay.
They're good until they're with mom or they see mom's face.
And once they see mom, because they know I'm safe here. I can let out my emotions. I can share my pain. And so again, are you giving your spouse and your family the priority they deserve? Are you bringing out the best in your children? Because your children therefore need who you are. They need that time. They need that attention. They need that nurture. They need that love. And they need for you to help them understand, what are my skill sets? You know, not every child is walking by the time they're 9 months old, okay? Not every child, is reading by the time they're 6 years old. Not every child is, learning how to bounce a ball, when they're, 10 years old. How do you bring out the best in your children? What is it that you need to understand about them? What is it you need to discover? Number 4, are you growing in the skills, mom, necessary to give your child his or her best chance to succeed? So moms, you need to be growing as well. And I know that puts a lot on all of us. That's true of dads as well, true of every parent. Are we growing in the skills necessary? What I mean by that is 99% of us, when we had children, did not get an owner's manual.
Right.
Okay. You get an owner's manual, you buy a car, change the oil every 3,000 miles, rotate the tires, do this and do that. When this light comes on, this is what you do. This kind of gas you put in your car if you want it to run well. But when you had a child, you didn't get an owner's manual.
Nope.
So what that means is, as a parent, which is the most important job on the planet, I will argue, because you are now affecting not only the life of your child, but you're affecting also that next generation. And so what you say and what you do impacts your child, but also impacts your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. So the point is this: are you growing in the skills necessary to give your child his or her best chance to succeed? Now you're going, well, how do I do that? How do I grow in those skills? Well, ask yourself, what books have I read on being a mom? There's tons of books on motherhood. What seminars have I gone to? What sermons do I listen to when it comes to motherhood? What principles do I apply? What does the Bible say about motherhood? What principles am I keeping? What principles have I been denying when it comes to motherhood? And so again, these things are so important. And sometimes we don't take the necessary investment in what does it mean to grow in the skills necessary to give my child his or her best chance to succeed. Again, one of the things that we also need to look at in that same vein, moms, is this. Have you overcome the family legacy that has contaminated the way in which, again, you desire and to parent your family?
Family legacy being what you've inherited.
Exactly. So, for example, some of you were raised with a critical mom. Nothing was ever good enough. You were never pretty enough. You never made the right grades. You never, made the team. You never got the scholarship. And so all you get from your mom is criticism. And the reason for that is all you got from your mother was criticism. And all she got from her mother was criticism. And so maybe it's time to break that family legacy, or maybe there's an addiction cycle going on. Moms, maybe you struggle with prescription meds, or maybe alcoholism or whatever. And because of the addiction, you were never really there for your children. And the reason why is your mom was never there for you, and her mother was never there for her. Or maybe there was no boundaries. Maybe, you never had boundaries for yourself, or never honored someone else's boundaries. Or maybe you're over controlling. It's your way or the highway, and you're controlling again and again and again and again, and it's this and it's that, and you can't do this, you can't do that, and no one, you're not going to go to the prom, you're not going to go to the homecoming, you can't do this, you can't go here, you got to wear your dress this way, you can't wear your hair that way, and now there's this over-controlling dominance. Why? Because that's how you were raised. So maybe again, we need to overcome the family legacy that has so contaminated the relationship. Here's one. Do you have a parenting plan that provides guidance based on biblical values? And sometimes this is important when you are dealing with maybe a situation of divorce. So, but do you and your ex-spouse, do y'all provide guidance together based on biblical values? That's so very important, because sometimes I hear this. My kid goes to see their dad, and he's Disneyland dad. He has no rules. He has no boundaries. He doesn't even go to church. What can you do to work that out? What can you do to help that? What can you do to encourage that? What can you do to make that happen? And if it doesn't happen at dad's house, make sure it happens at your house. And here's what they're going to say. We don't have to go to church at dad's house. And you go, well, it's dad's house, but here we're going to honor the Lord. Here's one. Do you have a plan in mind for what successful parenting will produce in your child's life? Do you have a plan in mind for what successful parenting will produce in your child's life. In other words, what skills are you giving your son and daughter? Are you helping your daughter to understand what it's like to have a decent person in your life? How to be treated as a young woman? How to be treated when they're on a date? Are you teaching your sons how to treat women well, with honor and respect and dignity? That's so very important to note, because we are the counselors, we're the pastors, we're the professors, if you will, of our child's life. And we need to make sure that they understand what that means, what that looks like. Here's one. Have you created an environment that generates feelings of safety and security? Are you creating an environment where there's structure and stability? I meet so many adolescents and young adults who said, you know what, my mom let certain men into her life. Or my mom, never really gave us this sense of feeling like we were loved. We never felt stable. We're always moving here and there. We never felt safe. We never had the self-confidence. We never, she kept constantly telling us, what a burden we were, that, one more mouth to feed. And we felt like we were a burden to her. So moms, dads as well, are you creating an environment that generates feelings of safety and security, structure, stability, self-confidence, and strength for your child? Again, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about an environment that you can create that creates an honor to moms and as well as to dads. Here's one. Is your parenting nurturing your child's individuality? Is your parenting nurturing your child's talents? Your child may love sports. Your child may love music. Your child, we said this before, may prefer basketball over football, okay?
Right.
Just because you love football and don't like basketball doesn't mean that that's the sport for your child, Are you parenting and nurturing your child's interests as they try to be the person God wants them to be? So the point simply is this. To be honored is important, but to do what is honorable is important as well. But here's what I know. If you build a family on faith and hope and love, the honor will come. And so moms, again, we pray that you'll have a great and amazing Mother's Day. Moms, you are to be honored, especially on Mother's Day. Again, I love it, when I think it was George Washington who said, everything I am or ever hope to be, I owe it all to my mother. And that's so true of so many of the great, men and women of history. Many of them will say, it was my mom who gave me the skills. It was my mom who gave me the confidence. It was my mom who gave me the love and nurture. It was my mom who taught me how to be, the person that I became. And that's so important. I love the quote that says, the hand that rocks the cradle is a hand that shakes the world. Yeah. And that is so very true. So moms, my prayer is this, is that you will be honored because, again, for who you are and for the role that God has given you in the family. So my encouragement to you is to, again, enjoy this Mother's Day. But again, Mom, like all of us, we need to make changes. We need to ask ourselves, what can I do to make changes, even at this age and stage of life, even among my adult children. If you have small children, again, the power and the importance of loving them, nurturing them, encouraging them, providing for them is so important. But as they get older, give them their wings, as they say. Let them fly, and then remind them of how much you love them. Remind them of what, again, how God has blessed you through them. And in so doing, I think you'll have that relationship that God intended, and they'll be honorable to you.
Well, there you have it from the Family Answer Man. To honor is important, and to be honorable is important as well. We hope that this episode, as always, has encouraged you and inspired you to make the changes that'll lead to stronger, healthier, and happier families.